Hello and welcome back to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jake Daly. Today is Tuesday, April 29th. We've got a good show for you today. I'm going to recap some of what happened in the spring transfer portal as it has officially closed now. Also, going to go over some of the next guys up, some guys that can be replacing NFL first-round picks, and what their outlook might be for this upcoming year. We're also going to talk a little bit about some undrafted free agents who I think could make an impact at the next level and NFL rosters. Also going to touch on the Pac-12 TV deal that just was announced this morning, as well as finishing up with, could Arch Manning actually stay at Texas for 2 years? I think it's something that's really interesting and more of a possibility than people think. But before I do anything else, I just want to remind everyone that we love hearing from you during our show. We want to make this show as interactive, as exciting as possible. So whether that's a comment, question, opinion, hot take, whatever you have, we love to hear it. One easy way to do that is to use the Super Chat feature. To do that, you go ahead, click the $sign in the bottom of the chat box to ensure that your comment, question, whatever hot take gets read, gets on the air. It's also just a fantastic way to support our channel and what we're doing here at GSMC. We couldn't do what we do without your ongoing support. We're so grateful to have you all as a part of our community. So I want to touch a little bit about just kind of what happened in the spring transfer portal. Obviously, the biggest thing, Nico Iamaleava, his whole saga, leaving Tennessee, skipping that Friday practice, coming, and it's still kind of a question mark. Was it more an NIL-based decision, and he just didn't get what he thought he would on the market, or was this more actually what the Iamaleava's family was saying, and this had more to do with Tennessee's scheme, with their offensive weapons, their offensive line? I'm not really sure. I think it's kind of both ways, and it sounds like this whole thing, it just makes a lot of sense for Nico to get out of Tennessee. I don't know if he's in a better situation now. I think, honestly, from an on-field perspective, he's joining a worse team in UCLA who doesn't have as many weapons as he had at Tennessee with him. But on the flip side of that, though, the offense that UCLA is going to run is going to be a more pro-style offense than that Veer kind of Josh Heupel offense that's super spread out, a pretty quarterback-friendly offense at Tennessee. So in terms of potentially looking towards the 2026 draft, could that have been a decision in that where Nico wanted to get in more of a pro-style offense to prepare for the draft, to give scouts kind of a look of what he could do in an offense that's a little more conducive to the pros? And then you had the other quarterback that UCLA had picked up in the winter portal in Joey Aguilar. He needed a new home after Nico went to UCLA. He decides, hey, I'm going to go replace him at Tennessee. And that's also a move that makes a lot of sense. Joey Aguilar, 2-year veteran starter for Appalachian State, about 7,000 passing yards in those 2 seasons combined. So this is a guy that has had some production, gives a little bit of a veteran presence to that Tennessee quarterback room. It's going to be really interesting to see kind of who wins this quote-unquote quarterback trade, whether it's UCLA, whether it's Tennessee, and who the winners losers are there. I think that's going to be kind of interesting just in terms of how that'll shake out. Though there were some teams that I think had some really solid pickups just in this spring portal. One of those being Texas. The Longhorns, they obviously have top 5 recruiting classes coming out of high school. So they're more looking to fill certain holes rather than overhaul the entire roster. And they picked up some really solid guys that can fill a couple of those holes. The first one, I think, is Emmett Mosley V from Stanford. Had a really great freshman season. He was tied for the lead for Stanford in touchdown catches last year. could be a guy that can fill that number 3 wide receiver role for the Longhorns. It really sounds like Ryan Wingo is going to kind of take over as that main go-to guy for Texas. Him and Arch seem to have some pretty solid chemistry and had a really great season last year as a true freshman, 430 receiving yards. But this is going to be a guy that's going to step back into that wide receiver 1 role. Emmett Mosley the fifth, though, I think he's a guy that could very easily develop and become a go-to wide receiver for Texas down the line. And he's also got 3 years of eligibility left. This is a guy that I think was a really solid pickup. And then also still on the offensive side of the ball, they picked up Cal tight end Jack Endries. Jack Endries had 91 receptions in the last 2 seasons. And Texas looking to replace Gunnar Helm, his production at that tight end position. This is a guy that has proven production at Cal, put up some really solid numbers the past 2 years. He's going to give Texas, Arch Manning, that kind of safety, blanket, target across the middle that they're going to lose in Gunnar Helm. So Jack Endries could be a guy that comes in right away, fills that hole that Gunnar Helm left, and is a really productive tight end for them. And then on defensive side, they also picked up Murad Watson, transfers from Syracuse, also Levon Johnson from Maryland. Both of those guys are going to help shore up that interior of the defensive line where Texas is losing multiple veterans. So picking up those 2 guys to fill another big gap in that team, I think it was a really solid pickup for Texas. They also picked up a kicker. Bert Auburn, their kicker last year, he really struggled late in the season, entered the portal, and they picked up Mason Shipley from Texas State, 31 of 35 on field goal attempts last season. Could be a guy that can upgrade that kicking game for Texas, make them a more well-rounded team overall as they go and push for a college football berth in the playoff and possibly a college championship. I also really liked what Oklahoma State did in this portal window. They got 9 transfers in the spring. Mike Gundy and his staff are really looking to overhaul this team after a 3-9 season in which they really struggled. They bring in Marshall's 2024 leading receiver and Christian Fitzpatrick. Also bring in a couple of D2 guys that really were stars at that level. Cam Abshire from Emory and Henry, as well as Terrell Davis, Central Oklahoma. Those were 2 guys that put up big numbers in D2. Could be guys that could help fill out that wide receiver room for the Cowboys. Also got some help along the offensive line, as well as at running back. And I think this is a team that could potentially be a lot better than they were last season. And then Texas Tech, I think, also had a really great portal. They had a great portal overall, just in terms of winter and spring. Overall, they had about 20 transfers come in, spent a bunch of money this year. But one of the biggest guys they got was in this spring in Stanford edge rusher David Bailey. Decided to transfer after Stanford fired head coach Troy Taylor. But this is a guy that could be an All-American, that type of level of player on the edge. Also, get Micah Hudson back. He was a 5-star that had been at Texas Tech, joined Texas A&M in the winter portal, and decided to come back to Texas Tech. And this is a guy that was a really high 4-star, low 5-star recruit, a guy that they had big expectations for in Lubbock, and he's going to come back and play for them again. Also, Penn State, I think they picked up Trebor Pena from Syracuse. I really liked that move for them. Wide receiver, big position I need for them. Pena, Syracuse's leading receiver last year, had a little under 1,000 receiving yards, but gives them a proven target to go with Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross, who were 2 other transfers they bring in, trying to remold that room. I really liked what they did there. And then just in terms of total numbers, there were more than 1,100 FBS scholarship players to enter the portal in the last month. Average of about 8 players per team. To get a sense of like the type of guys that enter the portal. So more than half, 600 plus, they appeared in fewer than 12 games in their career. More than 80%, there was about 950 plus, just under 1,000. they had started fewer than 10 career games, and then nearly half had fewer than 100 career snaps. So the vast majority of guys that are hitting the portal were guys that weren't really getting playing time, guys that were backups, or younger kids that just maybe were looking for a better situation, or just didn't really want to try to wait their turn. But it wasn't a lot of proven veterans, wasn't a lot of guys that had a lot of production. For the vast majority of these guys, they're kids that were backups, third string, fourth string, that were maybe just trying to look for a better opportunity. There's a couple guys that have entered the portal that are still not committed. One that actually I had written down, but he did commit a couple hours ago. Hykeem Williams, he was Florida State commit, originally signed with them in 2023. Number 4 overall wide receiver in the country in his class. Number 24 prospect overall nationally, but never really kind of broke through in his first 2 years. He appeared in 8 games as a true freshman, managed 8 starts in 2024, but he only caught 21 passes for just under 300 receiving yards during that time. But he is now committed as of today to the Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado looking to replace not just Travis Hunter, but also Jimmy Horn Jr., LeJontay Wester. Those 3 guys all got drafted, and they're going to have to replace a lot of production in that wide receiver room. This could be a guy that could maybe step up and help them out there in that category. AJ Haulcy, former Houston player. This guy is one of the most productive players in the portal, most experienced guys. He was all Big 12 first team last year in 2024, tied the conference for interceptions, had 5 total, leading the conference. Also finished second in the Big 12, had 13 passes defended, and also just had 74 total tackles, 172 stops over 2 years of college football. And it sounds like right now he's between Miami or Ole Miss. Commitment is expected pretty soon there. But this is going to be a big pickup for whoever does actually get AJ Haulcy. And then another guy I had is Amare Campbell, linebacker out of North Carolina. He actually had entered the portal in December, then decided against leaving when UNC hired Bill Belichick, then came back in the spring and decided to re-enter the portal. It does sound like he will be transferring. Second among UNC defenders last year with 76 total tackles, also had 6.5 sacks, and then he led UNC with 10.5 tackles for loss this season. One team I'm looking at as a potential option for Amare Campbell is the Penn State Nittany Lions, and he is set for a visit there this upcoming weekend. So we'll kind of see how that visit goes. Could he end up being a Penn State Nittany Lion? It's very possible, but another guy that's a really solid option still out there in this transfer portal window, but much more active than I think we were anticipating. Obviously, with the fallout from the Nico Iamaleava drama, that situation really seemed to come out of nowhere and threw this whole spring portal window for a loop. But there's going to be some big moves here and some teams that I think will have really big impacts in this season from this window. So we're going to take our first break of the show right now. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the next guys up, some of the guys who are going to be replacing 2025 NFL first rounders and what that could look like. We will be back shortly on the GSMC College Football Podcast.